Stuck emotions, you see by their posture, they're slouched, their chest is concaving, they're protecting their belly. You don't see a lot of that kind of that power in their legs, right? They're maybe a little bit more cautious. I find that the people who want to disassociate the most are people who are actually very empathic and very highly sensitive. And so that's why they disassociate, because they sometimes can feel too much and they're like, wait, get this out. And depending on how much you look away at these different sort of indicators that your body's signaling to you, right? The longer you look away, the more that your body's gonna be like, hey, hello, are you listening to me? Knocking on the door. That's why movement is so important.
Put your hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Welcome to Be Alive with Kate Manser. I am super honored to have Ting Ting Guan here with me today. Ting Ting is an internationally recognized movement and wellness teacher. She's got 20 plus years experience, and she is the creator of the GuanJing method, which is just this powerful flowing movement that is at the intersection of Qigong, yoga, and dance. And let me just tell you, you need this in your life. It's rooted in Chinese medicine, martial arts, and it's this really incredible fluid spiral-based movement. So we are here today to talk with Ting Ting about vitality and aliveness and movement and stuck emotions. So if that is something that is showing up in your life, we are here for you today. Welcome, Ting Ting.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversations.
And Ting Ting is coming at us live from Los Angeles, but is currently based up in Northern California. And, you have created this really powerful movement that, again, brings these three elements together. And, of course, I've been doing some research on you, aside from having followed your method for the past year. And you talk a lot about this moment in a post recently about realizing that you needed to stop being a student and start being a teacher. And so I'm curious about what that moment was for you, and when you finally had that realization that, I'm reached my culmination with being a student in this form. We're always life students. And you got the courage to create this method. What was that moment like for you, and what led up to it?
Like you said, we are always going to be students. We always have lessons that we're learning. And I think the desire to share the quality of movement and breath and intention and stepping into your power, that desire comes from how I was able to create that within myself and create and cultivate a practice that was unique to my own. That's when I wanted to truly start teaching. And it's funny, like I didn't have that innate instinct to start teaching. It was people were asking me constantly, like, oh, do you teach this? What are you doing? That's so cool. And I remember when I was moving through a very difficult, challenging time in my life, I just moved from Bali to Los Angeles. I was expecting my yoga career to continue in Los Angeles, and it felt flat on its face. I was down to $500. I was stressed out. I was feeling a lot of low self-worth. I was feeling no direction. And this movement of spiraling chi energy came forward from an overwhelming amount of stress and frustration from where I was at my own life. And so I started moving in this unique way that I've never have before. And I felt a lot more confidence. I felt a lot more presence, and just knowing that everything was going to be okay after I practiced these movements. And then I started doing this in public at the beach and at the park. And this is when all these people would come up to me, and I'm in my own world, and I opened my eyes and I had not just one, but every time consistently 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 people standing there being like, oh my God, I want to learn. And so after the 4th or 5th time, I look up at the stars and I'm like, okay, I hear you. I know you want me to teach this, but I don't know what I'm doing. And so I really had to take a step back and just observe what they were observing, which was me moving. And so that's when I started to utilize cameras, and I would get into the flow and I would notice, oh, I'm visualizing energy moving through my heart space on inhale, and then this movement on exhale. And then I was getting that I was creating these patterns and these energetic shapes. So from there, I started working my way into, okay, I can make this into a teachable practice, and I started outlining and creating the skeletons of what GuanJing was. And then it started taking off. I was like, okay, I'm going to host this local class and let's see who's interested. And I had a nice group of students. And then what really took off for me was actually just sharing it on social media and not being afraid to share just where I was at. And even if I were to look back at the social media that I was posting 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would cringe and say, oh my dear God, please take that off. But I think that's part of the process of stepping into a teacher, is realizing you're always going to be improving. You're always going to be learning. You're always going to look back and say, oh boy, that was a very adolescent version of me. But smiling at that and loving that and appreciating that, because that is what brings you to where you are today.
I really appreciate you sharing your process, because a lot of times we see someone come up with an idea and then the next thing we see is that they're this internationally acclaimed, leader in their field. And you're saying, no, I literally started out by just doing this in public for myself. And then that attracted people. And then but that was sort of a theme that you just described, which was just putting yourself out there in small ways. The first way was going to do this method at the beach. And then the second way was that started building up. And then you started this exploratory phase. And then the next phase was putting yourself out there online. And you just took these baby steps and were like opening up, right? Like I'm sort of opening my jacket here, like, okay, all right, I'm going to open my vulnerability and open up to the audience. And it sounds like you just had this really beautiful organic growth. Where along that path did you start to see the effects of how your method was impacting other people? And what were those effects that you started to see?
I mean, it's wild how what comes through for different people based on what they need and whether that's physical pain, whether that's, problems with family or their business, because all of the movements I teach is an intention of directing a certain energy through a certain part of the body, through the breath and through the dance of your body. And so when I started noticing, I mean, people who are in their 60s to 70s, there was a man who said that, hey, I got told I had advancing arthritis and that I wouldn't be able to walk. And after practicing with me, he took some one-on-one classes with me for about a month and a half, and now he's running triathlons and completely healed himself from this advancing arthritis. And I've had a woman who was really down about her business, and she didn't have inspiration, she didn't have direction, she was unsure about what next steps to take. And now her business, she does fabric and upholstery. Now her business is thriving. I've had some teacher training graduates who wanted to kind of elevate and expand and actually totally change direction. I have, some people who are in more of the hairstylist field, or some people who are massage therapists, and they wanted to incorporate and add in movement as part of what they offered. And now their business is completely thriving because they're adding this new dimension to who they are. And then, everything from just having more confidence in their bodies, feeling more beautiful and more sexy, having enough energy to go surfing, healing traumas with their from the loss of their parents. It all comes through in such different ways. And I think it's because they're moving whatever stuck energy is in their body, they're finally allowing to release and move, so that new current, that new wave, that new version of themselves can be birthed and shown into the light and, celebrated.
And that's one of the hallmarks that I see from the outside of when I first saw the GuanJing method. And of course, I discovered you through Instagram and was just, again, totally starry eyed for these beautiful movements that I saw. Is that, right? I'm a yoga teacher. It's not my main thing, but, I love yoga. I love movement. But there is this tendency in yoga where it's like, it's about this precision, and there's a certain level of competition that's involved, and doing right by the teacher and meeting our own standards. And really the difference that I saw with your method, and no hate to yoga at all. It's a beautiful, beautiful tradition. But with the GuanJing method is it was just this beautiful fluid movement that I could almost see in your videos, like the energy moving along with your body. And the fact that it has had such profound emotional effects on your students and beyond is no surprise. So you talk a lot in your work about this idea of moving stuck emotions. So what happens when someone doesn't move stuck emotions? And then, you've obviously just described the things that can happen when you do, but when people come to you and they're suffering, what does that look like?
You can really see it in how someone carries themselves. You can see it and coming into more Chinese medicine, this is what is known as the three treasures. So the three treasures is Qi, Jing, and Shen. And Qi is energy that can be depleted and replenished. So, you're tired, you're working all day, you go get some sleep. The next day, you feel replenished. Qi is constantly up and down, up and down. You can get qi through food, through conversation, through sleep. And then Jing is our primordial life force essence. This is something that lives in the kidneys. So this is our kind of our rate of mortality. So it's always kind of this like, it can never be topped off, but it can be nourished and tonified. So it slows down. So, things like meditation, things like, getting off the screen, stop multitasking all the day, reducing stress, that will increase your length of longevity. And then we have Shen, which is how brightly our soul exudes out of our smile, our eyes, our skin. And you can really see where someone's at just by looking at their face and just by how they're holding themselves. And so to come back to stuck emotions, you see by their posture, their slouch, their chest is concaving, they're protecting their belly. You don't see a lot of that kind of that power in their legs, right? They're maybe a little bit more cautious, or they're a little bit uncoordinated or clumsy. They're not really in their bodies. And so stuck emotions maybe starts off as a little pain here or there, but then it can start to snowball, and it can be leading from just pain in the pelvis to all of a sudden you have prostate cancer, to all of a sudden, you have these things that become chronic. And depending on how much you look away at these different sort of indicators that your body's signaling to you, right? The longer you look away, the more that your body's gonna be like, hey, hello, are you listening to me? Knocking on the door. Okay, well, I have to knock a little louder, a little harder. And the first signs when we feel like, I notice when I kind of hold my breath sometimes, or when I'm stressed out and I feel myself furrowing my eyebrows, a lot. And not an indicator someone's really impatient is they have those number 11s. It's not because they're aging and their things are getting more wrinkly. It's because this is the habit that they created this is the tension that's been created for themselves through repeated habits of holding that stress somewhere in their body. And so why movement, I believe, is the fountain of youth, is that it allows you a period of time to move that stuff, to consciously go into your body and look into it and say, where am I needing love? Where am I needing some, care? Where am I needing breath? Where am I needing movement? Where do I hold myself? A lot of times you see in the shoulders are up to their ears, or, the chin's jutting forward. And so you see these indicators of stress in people. And then the older they get and the longer they haven't addressed it, the more predominant these kind of characteristics are being seen. And then, that eventually will lead to disease or cancer or something more chronic. And that's why it's so important every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, to move, to take 3 deep breaths, to come back into gratitude for your body and this moment, and allow yourself to check in.
Beautiful. Well, let's do that right now for everyone who's listening. Just like Ting Ting said, let's just take 3 breaths together here. Let's not put it off for later. Let's practice immediacy. So 3 breaths all together. Filling the belly, the lungs. What an energy reset.
Mhm.
So, would you say then that, you talk about how Jing is this primordial life force energy? It's not just like chi, like our level of tiredness in the day, it's something deeper. And then you talk about these stuck emotions and how we need to move them. Would you say then that these stuck emotions can be blocking that primordial life force energy and that movement is one way to sort of unblock that?
Well, I would say that the primordial life force essence that we have is sort of our savings account to our mortality and our energy in the long term. And what not moving and having these stuck emotions in our body does is it kind of inhibits our ability to tap into the chi to be able to reset. So we're just more stressed out. And what does stress do? It shortens our lifespan. I mean, one of the worst things we can do is just be chronically stressed. You can see people who are stressed, right? They get really angry on the road driving, or they, their circuit is a little shorter. And so just regulating our stress levels is one way to help remove the blocks, which allow us to just let that flow of like energy, regular chi to flow through our body. Because we want to utilize chi to be able to go about our day, not get deep into our reservoirs. And, in some Chinese medicine practices, and a lot of people say this is, coffee's bad for you because it's stimulating you, but it's tapping into that reservoir because it's draining and pulling from the kidneys and the adrenals, and it's pumping and it's overloading and creating this kind of jump in and spike in energy rather than having that natural energy to begin with and not needing that caffeine. And I'm not, I love coffee. And so I do watch my intake, and I try to not utilize it and use it every day or have it just once in a while, but realizing, okay, how do I balance my body and feel naturally energized without caffeine or even before caffeine, maybe, and movement. Again, you take a 10-minute walk and you're wide awake, right? And so you can kind of learn how to balance yourself out without using substances and things outside of yourself to reset.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier about these signs that our body tells us that we're sort of misaligned or our chi is off is migraines. For me, like if my body is not happy, it sends me a migraine as a gift, right? It's like you haven't slept enough, you're dehydrated, you're too stressed, you're tensing too much. It's going to send me a migraine. So whenever I get a migraine, I always know like, oh, what do I need to pay attention to? What am I letting go? And I think paying attention to those little signs certainly takes practice, right? Because a lot of times we become a little bit disassociated with them. And that really brings me to my next question that I've been really excited to ask you about, which is, when you have people who come to your method who have maybe been disassociating, or rather from emotions, from difficult emotions, from intense emotions, maybe some of these lower vibration emotions, or even maybe disassociating from the higher levels of bliss and really just staying in this middle zone. How does one manage getting from being mostly disassociated from emotions to connecting with them, right? And part of it is through movement. And I'll share a brief story, which is that I quit drinking. So 6 year in January will be 6 years, no alcohol, love it, great. But a few years in, what I realized is that I wasn't so much addicted to alcohol. Like definitely I have like a gene in there that alcohol and I don't get along. But what I realized is that I'm way more addicted to a disassociation, and alcohol was just one of the ways. And I'm still struggling with disassociating through sugar, through screen time, and all of these things. And so this is a question that's obviously very alive for me, but I think for many others as well, this, especially screens, checking out into this world where I don't need to think. So how does one go from, being very out of touch with one's emotions to entering into this beautiful dance and inviting that into one's life?
I find that the people who want to disassociate the most are people who are actually very empathic and very highly sensitive. And so that's why they disassociate, because they sometimes can feel too much and they're like, wait, get this out, get this away. This is why, the screen time, the alcohol, that kind of stuff, it shuts our connection to those emotions. It takes us into another person. It like just like screen time does. Oh, we're not us anymore. We're this person in this on our phone, and alcohol, it's numbing, it's relaxing, it reduces stress. And so I find, people who are disassociating, they feel a lot and it can overwhelm them. And it can overwhelm them because they feel like they don't know how to move it out when it's happening. Right. And so For me, I've experienced this too, where I feel so much overwhelming emotion from something, whether that's, whatever I was going through that low period in my time in Bali, or, something that a partner has triggered in me or whatever. And you just like, "What?" And you just want to get like, that's why you want to leave, fight or flight. It's so important to come back to the body and realize that you have a choice of what you do with that.
Mm.
You can use it to empower you to educate yourself of like how deeply you can feel and how many lessons are within that feeling, and say, okay, this is what I choose to do with it. And this is one of my favorite things I like to share with people is like, who are we in the face of challenge? Do we run away from it whenever we're challenged by something, or do we step up and like step into that challenge with open arms saying, I got this. I'm more resilient. Building that resiliency emotionally, physically, mentally will make you become a more capable person, right? Like at the end of the day, resiliency is what keeps us young, which what keeps us attuned, keeps us present. And so that's why movement is so important, because it brings all of these different aspects together. It brings our emotional capacity, our physical strength, our mental coordination into play to dance with that challenge rather than run away from it. And actually the translation of GuanJing, Guan is my last name. It means, one of the translations is mountain pass, and Jing means the essence of. So GuanJing means the moving through life's challenges with the graciousness of the wind and the water flowing through the most challenging mountains, and learning how we can climb those mountains and traverse those mountains and dance with the challenge.
That's so beautiful. Dancing with our challenge. That's what you just said that really resonated within me because it doesn't feel good really when I am disassociating, when I have a big emotion and I go into the phone or I go into sugar or whatever, flavor of the shopping, all the different addictions that we have. It doesn't really feel good. I know that I'm being separate from that life force energy and from the challenge, and it's going to be there when I come back. And so inviting that in and dancing. And I love that your last name, which is part of the name of your method, is this mountain, right? Because that's what challenge is it's like a couple steps up. And I remember I climbed Annapurna once, not the peak. I just went to the base camp. And it was my first big like mountain trek. And one of my biggest takeaways from that was like, oh, when you climb a mountain, it's not just like up because it was like I would go up and then I'd be like, oh my God, we're supposed to be climbing a mountain. Why are we going down? And then I got to go back up again. And what a great analogy for, right, like the trials of our lives is that it's not just this like steady climb up. You're going to be going down and then it's going to be coming back up. And so traversing that, like you said, with the dancing and the softness with, with what that path is. That's so beautiful. And this brings us, I think, to this topic of vitality, because dancing, to me, dancing with our challenge, that is indicative of vitality, right? Because it's being present through all of the experiences of our life. I like to think about aliveness as a spectrum, right? If I can't feel alive when I'm crying on the kitchen floor, then how can I be fully present and awake when I'm in the most blissful moments of my life? And it's all part of the gift of being alive, that whole spectrum. And so let's dive into this topic of vitality and aliveness. And let's just start by, I'm curious when you feel most alive.
I think, there's so many moments that make me feel so alive. And one of the most important aspects I like to bring into my life is how I can feel alive in the most mundane situations, at the grocery store or waiting in line in traffic. And that's when I actually pull out the just silliness, because I don't know how to just sit and be normal. you know,
Yes.
of course I feel
Snaps
alive
up
when
for that.
like, of course I feel alive on a hike, or I'm in a beautiful, like, tropical island, or when I just got back from Mongolia. And of course I feel alive when I'm riding horseback on a feral horse going up a steep mountain cliff edge holding a golden eagle. Yes, that's clearly when I feel alive, you know? But, like,
I just
how
got the best
often
visual. Yes.
but, like, how often are we in those situations, right? So I think it's really important to me to feel that aliveness in just everyday life. When I'm at the grocery store, I just boogie down, I get silly, crack up with my friends. There's always a dance party. Like, it doesn't matter where, there's always a dance party. And there was one time, actually a few times, when I would take my students, and I host retreats in Egypt. And sometimes, it's Egyptian time. So we're waiting for like 45 minutes for our bags at the carousel. And, we could just be like in a bad mood and annoyed and like just grumpy. But what do? We take out a portable speaker, we get out our singing bowls and our silk fans, and we just start a party. And it makes me feel so alive, because then all these strangers that we don't know, that we're just kind of sitting there, perk up, and then they're clapping and laughing and dancing. And then it got to the point where the security guards at the airport tried getting us on the conveyor belt to have us dancing around the baggage claim and wanting to take our pictures and our autographs. And so I think that's like the best part of being alive, is that we can choose to be alive at any moment.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's incredible. And just realizing like that can happen in any mundane moment. It's just our outlook and that bit of courage and playfulness that can take something so mundane to a party that not only uplifts your mood, but everybody around us. And, one of my huge mentors and what actually set me on this path of awakening that got me to where I am today is a guy named Dan Friedenberg, who, we were colleagues at Google, and he was just the most playful, fun. He would play pranks on his friends. Everything was a joke. Brilliant guy, also a mountaineer and all of these things. But your energy just reminded me of the power of, and so think about, if you're listening to this, think about that person in your life who brings that element of joy and silliness and play to the most mundane and boring things, and maybe send them a text to let them know how much you appreciate them. And think about how we can embody that, because there's no reason that we cannot. We, of course, we're all going to be doing it in our own ways, for sure. You may or may not have silk fans and singing bowls in the airport. But I think that we can all, I think we all want that too. We want to have fun and be silly, but we have certain inhibitions and self perceived limitations that prevent us from doing that. So, would you say that your method, I'm just getting this sense of opening, right? Like opening to the silliness of life, opening to the beauty of being alive, opening to this vitality and this and the Jing. What does that opening process look like in your clients, right? Because you talked about a lot of the results, right? Like, oh, so they changed their business, they
Right.
became more open. But how is it when you get someone who's very tight and closed down and you've gotten them to this endpoint? What happens in the middle though?
It's a great question. First of all, it's their initiation. They need to take the step to come to me and say, "Hey, I want to book your retreat, or I want to book your next training." They have to know that they want to change something about themselves, or they witness that they're unhappy with themselves in some way. And one of the overall, I take all these surveys about why did you come to my training? And one of the number one things is they have judgment of themselves. They feel like they're constantly judging themselves. And you see those people who are constantly judging themselves because they're always judging other people, right? So the people who are always judgy are very judgmental of themselves. And that's the barrier that doesn't allow you to access that playfulness, that kind of silliness, that childhood, like, because you're judging yourself. You're like, oh, maybe I'm too much of an adult to be rolling on the floor, cracking up or having a random dance party. Or what will people think of me? And that's just blocking your ability to have a fun, silly life. Like, who cares what people think of you? Maybe that actually gives other people permission to also be like, oh, cool. Yeah, all right, cool. They're doing it. Like, I get to like move my body a little. I get to laugh and smile and be more open. But that process within the trainings is really dropping into the spaces of where you're holding tension and being aware of your breath, because our breath is a number one expression of the most physical manifestation of our soul. How we're breathing in our body truly tells a story. And being able to find a full deep inhale, full deep exhale, riding the waves of inhale and exhale in a rhythmic, smooth way will not only expand and improve your lung capacity and all these other physical things, but it also allows the mind to come into a state of calm and presence. And from that place, in the training, we learn to utilize that full breath. I call this waveform breath. We use the waveform breath to then begin to dance with our breath and dance with some simple postures that just get people out of their mind. You know, instead of thinking, oh, what am I doing with my legs? What's happening over here? Just how are you feeling? Do you feel more alive? Do you feel a little more open? Do you feel reduced tension? Are you using that breath to melt away that stress that's in the back of your neck? And then after maybe 1 or 2 weeks, it starts to improve. We start to get into more intricate movements. And then we start to really dance. By week 3, we start really dancing with that energy and getting into a full body flow. And throughout that process, people truly find so much more confidence in themselves. I've had so many students say, oh my God, I never thought I could do anything like this. I have, a few students in their 50s, again, 60s, 70s, who came up to me and said, I thought that I wasn't flexible enough for this, or, I wasn't strong enough. And I realized I am actually very strong, but their belief system about themselves, the judgments they have, the doubts that they have had inhibited themselves from stepping into it. And that's why starting off really simple with the breath, simple movements, gets them sort of warmed up and primed up to be like, oh, I can do the next step. And before you know it, I have people in deep back bends going around and full circles with their arms and rising up and falling down with the chi. And it's really beautiful.
That is absolutely beautiful. It reminds me of this notion where you think about Michelangelo, right? And how he carved these amazing sculptures out of marble. And, typically when we think we want to change our life, we're like, what do we need to add? What do I need to do? Right? What habits should I start? But a lot of times it's what we can remove. And so I think about like Michelangelo, and what he used to say about his marble sculpting is that it was his job, like with the David, for example,
Mhm.
to not create the David. His job was just to remove all of the parts that weren't David until the David was revealed. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what do I need to cast off? What do I need to move through in order to reveal who true Kate is inside?" And it sounds like your movement, your practice, the GuanJing method, is a beautiful way to just move these stuck layers to reveal who we are truly inside.
Yes, yes. And everyone, some people are move a little quicker and some people it takes a little more time. But what I always remind my students is, they're like, oh, I still don't look like you. And it's like, well, you're not supposed to look like me. You're supposed to look like you. You're supposed to move like you. And everyone is going to flow differently because we all have literally physical, anatomically different body parts. But not only that, we have different characteristics. We have a different life force essence. We have different souls. And what my job is to make sure that you are discovering the depths of yourself safely and making sure that your pelvis is in the right position and that your spine is moving properly and that you're, making sure that you're not holding that tension in the back of your neck, or just making sure that you're physically safe. And then from there, you can express however you want to express and make those variations to the movements that were created, because the movements were just a vehicle to get you into a place where you felt more embodied and more capable.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really want to talk about the notion of the spiral in your work. That was something I've been really looking forward to talking to you about. So the program that I'm studying for a master's right now is called transpersonal psychology, which is the psychology of going beyond the everyday, going beyond the everyday mind, going beyond the ego, right? And there's a psychologist in that tradition named Michael Washburn, and he came up with this idea of the dual spiral. And it's this idea that in order for us to reach like full individuation or integration, we need to be, it's not this like linear path upward, like we talked about with the mountain, that we need to be spiraling upward, but we also need to be spiraling downward and gathering some of these lower emotions or our past history. And so it's sort of this dual spiral that we're spiraling up and down to create this holistic element at once. So I'm curious kind of what that means to you. And I know you've done tons of work with the element of the spiral in the GuanJing method. And how does that show up?
I'm so inspired by this spiral, and I find the spiral so fascinating because this is the structure that is found in so much of nature, everything from a galaxy to a seashell to our DNA to just all of these different formations are built on the foundation of the spiral and the symbolism of it, right? Just like you just said about the upward moving and downward moving, and even with the progress of our life or the progress with relationships, that we always kind of evolve. We're not really at the same point, but we go back, and maybe something that triggered us in the past, right? It You see it again and you're like, oh well, how do I handle this now that I've already learned this lesson from the stuff down below? And so it really just shows up in so many different aspects of our life, and even our fascia is spiraling around the body. The heart is actually, if you unravel it, it is in the form of a spiral, and so is our pelvis. There's just It's so moving in a spiral, to me, is just common sense, like, of course we want to create spiraling circular shapes because this is what our DNA is made out of. This is where our heart, our fascia, our systems, the galaxies are formed. And so to me, it really symbolizes moving in harmony with nature, moving in harmony with the evolution of nature, the evolution of your soul, the evolution of your body, getting into a place that is not that linear thought, but it just allowing every spiral of the head or the pelvis to be a deeper understanding of your body, a deeper understanding of what you're holding it down there, or what your intentions are, and letting that energy move and spiral the body to unravel it to a deeper understanding of who you are. And so spiraling movement is one of the most powerful ways of just that kind of self-discovery. Everything that so far we've created a lot, not everything, but a lot of movement, everything from weight training, even yoga. Yoga's very linear with the hands up, hands, warrior one, warrior two, trikonasana. It's very linear. You think about calisthenics and CrossFit, and all these things are very masculine, strong, driving forces. And I mean, what is more soft and feminine? There's belly dance. There's kind of, yes, there's, like more of that softer way of dancing. But I also was wanting to find something that was soft, but also strengthening. And so GuanJing really challenges you to engage the pelvic floor, engage your legs, build that strength from the bottom up, and use that spiraling motion to move that energy and that chi through and surrounding the body.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And that's really what I noticed first about it. It was like, oh, this is yoga and Qigong, but there's these beautiful and it just felt, when I saw it, it did feel sort of primordial, to come back to this idea of the primordial energy that you're trying to unlock in people through this method. When I saw it, I just felt like, oh, that's how I'm meant to move. Again, this linearity of yoga and weightlifting, which, I love movement and I love working out in both of those, but this idea of like this very fluid and I don't think we can have a conversation with you about your method without talking about femininity, because when I saw your method and started following it, I was just like, this is what's going to unlock me into my softness. This is what's going to unlock me into my strength. So I think there's a connection between that spiral fluid movement and femininity. How have you seen that show up in your work? And was that your intention when you started?
It wasn't my intention, but it, of course, is what, like, that femininity that comes from the movement is because of the surrender to allowing yourself to feel. And of course, surrender is the aspect of the feminine. And if anyone knows me personally, they know that I'm the one that's like, let's hit. Yeah, like I love hitting the gym. I love running up those mountains, on a hiking trail. I am very like go go go. I'm the year of the fire tiger, the young fire tiger. So I have a lot of that like kind of masculine drive. And but my lesson, and that how GuanJing was formed, was surrendering to what is and softening into what is. And there was actually 2 years ago, I decided to go and study kung fu and wushu up in the Wudangshan, where the birthplace of Taoism was formed, and study martial arts and qigong and tai chi. Because honestly, I had never studied qigong and tai chi before, and so many people ask me, "Oh, you must have studied qigong," and I'm like, "No, I've never done that ever before in my life." And so I decided, I was like, wow, am I like am I imposter? Am I just like just randomly subconsciously taking these movements of something I've already maybe seen in a movie? Like I don't know. So I decided, okay, let me just go and study this and see what the difference is. And I'm so glad I did because there is a massive difference. I love yoga. I love Qigong and Tai Chi, but Qigong and Tai Chi come from a martial arts form and it's a more yin based martial arts, but it is all very defensive. It's very keeping the pelvis low and tucked under, making sure you know blocking techniques. And again, it's very masculine. It's very structured. And GuanJing is about releasing that and being vulnerable, opening your neck, rolling your head out, deep breathing, deep, lifting your heart up towards the sky, like giving your body a chance to really open to the possibilities of expansion and surrendering into what you feel, but breathing that life, that vitality into those parts of the body that feel the stress and the frustration and the hindrance. And so very dramatically different, both powerful in their own ways. But yes, GuanJing is absolutely much more of a feminine art form. That being said, I do have a lot of men who come to me and practice this, and they are, very in their masculine, and it's actually the medicine that they need because they've been too much in their masculine, and they don't realize how tight they are or how much they've held on. Either that's in their chest, or it shows up in the way that they breathe, or that it shows up in their back and their neck. So even though it is a more feminine based movement, it doesn't block a man to be able to practice because it gives them and offers them an opportunity to be vulnerable.
So I want to connect that idea to kind of like the greater consciousness and what's going on in the world, because I feel like you said, that this movement, while it does have these very strong feminine tones and textures to it, but part of the reason that you created it, as you said, was because you wanted to bring something that was opening and vulnerable and soft, but also built strength. And I do get that from the work, that it is this balance between this soft subtleness and this strength. And so, I want to just think for a second about connecting this method, the GuanJing method, to activism, right? And this benefit of bringing softness and strength to the way that we show up in the world, the way that we show up in our communities, the way that we show up in our individual positions of power. So, what do you see kind of for the future that you would like for this balance of softness and strength to show up in the world?
Mm. I mean, start with your neighbor, right? I think with all that is happening in the world and with all, and it's even harder now, especially with AI and all of this stuff where there's so much misinformation on top of the suffering and the craziness. It's like now we don't know what's real anymore. And I think that causes a lot of anger for people, and they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to release it. They don't know what to do with it because they don't know what action to take. And I find that, especially in like just random situations around town, it's like the pro Trumps and the anti Trumps. And like there's all this kind of friction, but they're still your neighbors. So how are you going to treat them? What kind of world do you want to live in? And of course, everyone's going to have opposing or conflicting belief systems, and they're all going to have their point of view and their own objectives of what they believe a world should look like, or how a society should be run. But everyone has to agree that in order to have a harmonious society, you must be a good person to your next door neighbor and to the people in your community. And so you can feel that strength within your own virtue and value system, but that strength becomes more powerful when you treat the people around you with respect and have respectful, hard conversations if are to come up with each other on opposing belief systems and topics. And I think that people have become incredibly, like they haven't been really intelligent with how they've expressed their frustration. And that's led to some really poor choices. And that made them lose their power and their strength. And so I find that the strength, and we become more strong and we appear and are more capable when we know how to hold ourselves in integrity of what we believe to be a good person. So remaining calm, remaining present, and then still treating people with respect allows you to soften into the belief that, okay, if I treat them with respect, and maybe they don't treat you with respect, and that's fine. But hey, what if you then offer them an opportunity to also be like, oh, you're right. Like, yeah, let's be civil and kind to each other.
Yeah, again, this opening, right? Like this that we think we need to push people away that don't have our beliefs. We need to, and there, there's something to be said, of course, for boundaries and, we get to regulate how open we are to an individual, but that what it sounds like what you're suggesting is that softness feels better than the hardness and the restriction and the closing. And so it sounds like what you are inviting us is to just consider maybe where we are showing up hard or restrictive in our life toward ourselves, toward our neighbors, toward society, and maybe just invite an opening. And I can certainly say in my own life that when I do that and I am able to see that where I am being restrictive or closed off, and I can just gently soften into whatever it is I'm trying to push, it just feels so much. Again, it's that into that aliveness of like, oh, I'm actually capable of experiencing this thing that I am rejecting, right? And so we're able to build, as you said, resilience, which is such an aspect of our life force that that's what your method invites us to do. So what is your vision for the GuanJing method over the next 10, 20, or 30 years, right? Like if you can like step back and just share your vision, I would love to hear that.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. I love this question because it allows me to kind of take that bird's eye view once again. And I always take that bird's eye view once every few years because, when you're so in your work and in your dharma and you're on your mission, you forget to sometimes look back at where you started. And now, like lifting up and seeing from 10 years from now, I really would love to see this movement become something as well known as yoga or Pilates, and a way of for people to say, oh, you know what, I want to spiral today. Like, let's get some of that spiraling movement in. Let's move our spines. Let's move our hips. Let's work this emotion out of us, and having that be a staple in toolbox for people to help them regulate and find harmony and find health in their lives. And that's one of the biggest parts of my mission, is just making this accessible to all walks of life, whether you watch my free YouTube channel or you decide to join the membership, which is only $55 a month, or you decide to enroll in the teacher training, which then you get a much deeper learning about the science of energy and anatomy and all of that. There's always an opportunity to drop in at whatever depth and level you would like to drop in at. And if anything, I would love people to just practice and know it and say, okay, yeah, let's spiral. Like, let's try this movement and share at the park, share with their family, because it really is fun. All the movements are developed to feel amazing in the body. That's I'm not trying to, that's the difference. Like Pilates, like I actually just took a Pilates class today and I'm like, this is torture, this is not GuanJing. But GuangJing is meant to feel absolutely amazing and liberating for anyone practicing, and so that is my ultimate goal 10 years from now.
Well, I certainly hope to take your teacher training after I finish my master's next year. And I know retreats are an integral part of your work. So, how often are you doing retreats? Are they always in the same place? Because you talked about, right, like AI and technology and the sort of fracturing of relationships. And so, obviously, in person connections are really important for you.
Yes, really, really important. And with my retreats, I like to focus more on the spiritual energy and because these places are so powerful. I've gone to Egypt. My goodness, I mean, for the past 4 years, twice, sometimes three times a year, and hosting ceremonies and practicing GuanJing in the temples is definitely an experience of a lifetime and highly recommended. We're hosting some new ones. We just did Mongolia. There's up in the works is going to be a tea harvest retreat up in the Yunnan mountains with the Bulang tribe. And then we have as well Greece coming up. We're going to all the different oracle temples there.
Wow.
And the spiral is so profound in Greece. It's amazing. Even the seedlings that I find on the ground have these spiraling shapes. The trees, there's just so much beautiful energy over in Greece. And yeah, and it's nice to kind of have that journey with yourself in these beautiful places and practicing movements and exercises that help breathe that into life, breathe that into your body. And then, of course, I have more training centered retreats, which is more in Mexico and Bali, where we spend the whole time in one place and focus more on the anatomy and the movement and precision. And those are great too, because people, there's certain people just really want to learn the more of the intricate postures and more of the intricate basic flows. And so that's an opportunity as well. But yeah, it's a lot of times when I host a retreat in my own head, I'm going, I really want to go there. Let's just do something with it.
So where is your next one? If people are interested in joining, I'm sure they can probably go to your website, which we'll share for sure. But tell us about your next retreat.
Yeah, so in January actually is in Mexico. It's the teacher training retreat. You don't have to have had to go to the teacher training in order to join, but we are going to be learning more about hands-on adjustments, anatomy, postures. And then in February is the mastery retreat. So we're going to be in this beautiful lush villa in the middle of the jungle where we have our own private waterfalls. And there'll also be more of an intensive training. And then after that, the next retreat after that will be in Greece and then in Glastonbury in the UK.
Great. Oh, okay. So you've got several planned for
Yes.
2026. So join up that. I can't wait to join one myself. I feel like Egypt or Greece are calling me. So I'll be looking up your retreats there. Man, this has just been such an honor and a pleasure. Where you said you have a YouTube channel, tell us where we can engage with you and to join your programs.
Yeah, so if people have Instagram, GuanJing method is going to be the easiest way for them to access all that information. And from the Instagram, you click on the link in bio. There is the link to the YouTube channel, the free class, the monthly membership, the book. It's hand illustrated by me. I wrote this 2 years ago, and I love the book because I'm one of those people where I look at like an old Tai Chi book and it goes figure A and then figure B and they're in a completely different shape. And you're like, wait, how did you go from figure A to figure B? You're writing 5 paragraphs to describe what you're doing. I can't do that. So what I love about what the book that I created is that it's literally like almost like a stop animation book where you're seeing every little moment of how the posture changes and also the breath and then the energy that's being created as you're doing it. And so so the book is great for that. And then I also have all the listings of retreats there as well as the trainings coming up.
That is so cool that you illustrated your own book. That
Thank
is so
you.
beautiful. Yeah, I want to close by just honoring the way that you show up in the world, your passion for this and your love for humans and for helping us through our process and to discover, like you said, one GuanJing student is not going to be like the other. You're not trying to get them to a certain level of mastery. It's about exposing who and discovering who we really are. And that is exactly what we need in the world. So thank you so much. And as we close, I just want to open it up. If there's any message that you have for listeners today, something that's been on your heart maybe recently, or just some words of encouragement, that would be so appreciated.
One of the things that I'm moving through right now, especially as we're entering into the depths of winter, is that you're allowed to rest. You don't always have to be doing something all the time. You don't always have to be self-improving. You're allowed to have fun. And, having fun can be some of the highest forms of spirituality and deep connection. And it doesn't have to be a certain way, right? Like we all experience something transformative in different ways. And that's okay. So there's no right way to do something. And just resting and allowing yourself to enjoy that rest is so important, especially now. Like even I feel like that. I even planned like 6 months ago, I planned in my calendar, okay, December, I'm not doing much. I'm just going to enjoy. And now it comes December and have all of this anxiety and being like, oh my God, I should be doing something. And then I look at my calendar, I'm like, oh wait, I wrote rest.
I'm supposed to be doing nothing.
I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to rest and have fun. And we're allowed to do that. And I think that sometimes when we rest and again, it's that relax and surrender, it allows us to like be able to receive that abundance and the things that we're calling in. I mean, how can we be in a receiving mode if we're always stressed and tense and up and out, right? So we just rest and relax and have fun.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, you have totally made me feel alive today, and I hope that everyone else is feeling the same. Thanks again for your time and your talent, and go follow Ting Ting and the GuanJing method. And I can't wait to see what happens over the next 10, 20 years and beyond.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Alive with Kate Manzer. And thank you for listening to any episode of Be Alive with Kate Manzer that you have ever listened to. It seriously means so much to me. You guys, we are coming up on 1 year of this show. What? Yes, and I am not going anywhere. In fact, I am doubling down. I have the most epic and beautiful, exciting season 2, year 2 planned for you. We are going to go even more deeply into the science, philosophy, psychology, and woo-woo of the wild and wonderful experience of being alive, as well as one of my personal favorites, as you know, mortality awareness, mystical experience, and beyond. It's going to be so, so good. Thanks for being here. Share this with a friend, subscribe, and let's let this little show shine its light wherever it's meant to, but with the help of your sharing. Thank you so much. All my love. Thanks for being alive with me today.